Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we are going to be covering section 4.15 and we are going to cover 4.12. The only part of 4.12 that we are going to cover are flag variables, and then we'll come back to algorithms next week or the week after. So let's go and start with tracing code. We've been writing code from the very first day, and our code has gotten a little more complex, correct? We've done a sequential manner on the first and second chapter, and then on the third chapter, or the third unit, we've done if statements. If statements is going to control the flow of your code. So it's going to decide, we're going to make decisions whether we need to be able to execute a piece of code or we are going to skip it. Now we are going to iterations. Iterations are going to be the repetition of the same code over and over again. And that is when it's very important for us to be able to learn how to trace it. So you should have your booklet ready. So let's get ready to trace. Let's get ready to trace. So let's go through the first algorithm that we have. So now, in this case, we are going to be tracing code. We have the following block of code. It says, consider the following loop. If you were given a question on the AP test that asked you what is the first and the last number printed. So therefore, we want to be able to find the first and the last number that will be printed by this block of code. How will you figure that out? So it is good to be able to have some structure. It is good to be able to have some structure as we continue to examine and analyze and debug more complex code. So what we're going to do, we're just going to be building a quick table. So I'll have a ruler with me, and I'm just going to make a quick table. Now, right now we have our num is our variable. Let me just bring myself a little. Perfect. Num is the only variable that we have. So therefore, we are going to write down num. And we are going to go into a while loop. And we're going to say, while num is less than 33, we are going to continue. And then we're going to print a statement. We're going to print the variable num. From there, we're going to add 1. And then we're going to continue. So therefore, this will be our variable, and then I'm going to place our output right next to it. So one of the things is that just make sure that you guys have enough space. And now let's go and start tracing the code. So let me just go and place a little quick T-chart. I know that this is bringing back memories of truth tables, but this is much easier. And now we are going to initialize our variable num to 21, so that'll be the first number. Remember, the question is what is going to be the first number printed, and then what is going to be the last number. So we don't have to worry about the numbers that are here. That's going to help us go through and decide what numbers will be printed. But the thing that we're looking for, we are looking for the numbers that is going to be printed in this section here. Do you agree? So therefore, here's our code. We are first 21. Then we are going to go into the next line and say, is the number less than 33? 21 is greater than 30, is less than 33. So therefore, we're going to continue. When we continue, we are going to print the number. So therefore, that gets printed, and that'll be 21. So the first number is going to be 21. And now we are going to continue to add 1. So therefore, our num is now 22. We're going to continue with the loop. We're going to go to another iteration. So we're going to say, is the number less than 33? 22 is less than 33. That's a true statement. So therefore, we are going to continue. And now we're going to print it. 22. We go to the next statement, which is add 1, and that'll be 23. And then we finish the loop, so we're going to go through another iteration. And we are going to ask ourselves, is 23 less than 33? Yes. And we're going to go to the next statement inside the loop, which will be printed, so 23. And you get the point, right? So therefore, let's continue on and say, you know, I need to get to 33. So it's going to go all the way through, and then I'm going to jump. I'm going to make a big jump to 30. That sounds good to me. So therefore, the number gets to be 30. I increase to 30. Then it continues through another iteration. It says 30 less than 33. Yes. So therefore, it goes inside the loop, and it prints the number once again. So therefore, that'll be 30. So all those numbers got printed. We increase it by 1. That'll be 31. Now remember that 31 has not gotten printed yet. So therefore, we are going to go through another iteration and say, is the number 31 less than 33? Yes. So therefore, the number gets printed, 31. And now we add 1, which will be 32. We go through another iteration and say, is the number 32 less than 33? Yes. So therefore, we go through and print the number. We add 1 more, which will be 33. And we go through another iteration. And we're going to say, is 33 less than 33? No. So therefore, we exit. And the number 33 never got printed. So the first number that got printed was 21, and the last one was 32. So you do have to be very careful. And on your AP exam, so for some problems that are going to be a little more challenging, you do need to be able to go through and trace the code by making a set of columns. And especially as we go into recursion, you guys will see that the problems get a lot more challenging, exponentially challenging. And you do need to be able to make an effort to trace your code. Now, let's go to the next one. Take a minute or two and see, okay, what is the difference between this block of code and this block of code? So what is the difference? Right, the only difference is that now num++ is added before. And remember that we talked about this on the last set of notes. Does it make a difference? It does make a difference. But your job is to go to decide what is going to be the first and what is going to be the last number that's going to be printed. So let's go and make a table. And I know what you're thinking, Diaz, do I need to make a table? Yes. Now, there's going to be cases that we can analyze it pretty quickly, but there's going to be times that we don't, or we are not able to do as fast in our head. And especially in your AP exam, those small questions that you should be able to get correct are going to push you over to a 5. So therefore, we have num once again. That is the only variable that we have. And this will be our output. What are we going to print? And once again, we start with 21. So once we start with 21, then we go to the loop and say, is 21 less than 33? Yes, so therefore we're going to start the loop. Now we are going to add 1 first, so therefore that becomes 22. So now the number that's going to get printed first will be 22. Now we're going to go through another iteration, and we're going to say, is 22 less than 33? Yes. So therefore we go through and we add 1 more, which will be 23. and now we print the number. So therefore, that'll be, let me just jump over here, and that'll be 23. And now we go through another iteration and say, is the number less than 33? Yes, right now it's 23. So we add one more, that'll be 24. So what do you think is going to be the last number that's going to be printed? So therefore, it's 24, and now we print it out, 24. And now let's go and jump all the way to 30 or 31. 30 should be fun, right? So you don't want to make too close of a jump that you're not going to be able to determine what is going to be the last number. So therefore, it is 30. So the 30 is here. We just added one more, and then we print it. So therefore, our next number that was going to be printed will be 30. And then we go through another iteration. Is 30 less than 33? Yes. We go through the loop and add 1, 31. Then we print the number, 31. Now, we printed it. We go through another iteration. Is the number less than 33? Yes, it's 31. So therefore, we add one more, 32. We print it, so that'll be 32. We go through another iteration. Is the number less than 33? Yes, it's 32. So that's a true statement. We go through it. We add one more, and we print it. And now we go through another iteration. Is the number 33 less than 33? No. So therefore, we don't go through the loop any longer, and we continue. In this case, there are no more statements. So the first number will be 22, and the last one will be 33. So that's why it's very important for you guys to be able to make a table. And you can skip quite a few numbers. Now, if you wanted to skip all the way to 31, that's fine. I would not recommend to skip it to 32 because that's a little too close to 33, and you might lose something in the process. So just be careful. Now let's go through the last trace for today. And then we're going to go over flag variables very briefly, and that'll be it. So let's see if you can trace the piece of code. Go and pause it, try it, make your columns. So therefore, we'll have num once again, and then we're going to have output. There are no other variables. There's going to be times that you have more variables to track and to trace. So now this will be your output. And now we're going to start with 1, 3, 4, 7, 5. So go and pause it, see what you get, and then we can check our answers. Got it? Excellent. So first, we have the first number. Then we're going to say, is the number not equal to 0? That is a true statement. 13,475 is not equal to 0. So now we're going to go inside the loop. And now we are going to take the number, we're going to divide by 10, and we're going to assign it to the number itself. So therefore, the number divided by 10. If I divide this by 10, it gives me 1,347.5. But because num is an integer, what is going to happen? It's going to chop off the decimal. So therefore, instead of being 13,407.5, because num is an integer, it's going to get rid of the decimal. And now we are going to print it. So therefore, the first number that gets printed will be 1347. And now we're going to go and say, wow, go through another iteration and say, is 1347 not equal to 0? That is correct. So now we can go inside, and once again, we are going to take the number and divide by 10. which will be 134.7. But we know that num is an integer, so therefore it will be 134. The 0.7 will be chopped off. And now we can print it. And it'll be 134. Now we go through another iteration. Is it not equal to 0? Yes, it's not equal to 0. So that's a true statement. We can go inside the loop. And now we're going to divide by 10. So it'll be 13.4, but because that's an integer, it's going to be 13. And now it gets printed. And now we go through another iteration and see what is going to be the last number. Pause if you haven't figured this out. Is it not equal to 0? Yeah, it's not equal to 0, so therefore we're going to divide by 10, which will give us 1.3. But the decimal will get chopped off, or therefore it will be just 1. Then we're going to print it. Once we print it, we're going to go through another iteration. Now we're going to say, is 1 not equal to 0? That is a true statement. So therefore we go inside, we're going to divide by 10. When we divide by 10, it's going to be 0.1. But because that is an integer, what's going to happen to the decimal is going to get chopped off. So now we have 0. We are going to print the 0. And now we go through another iteration. Is num is not equal to 0? That is false because that is equal to 0. So therefore, we exit the loop. So this is what's going to get printed. So sometimes I'll tell you what is the output of this statement, and this will be one of your options. Any questions? So this is going to be very helpful, especially as the code gets more challenging, correct? Such as this one is getting a little bit more challenging, and some of the algorithms that we're going to be working in class, they're going to really make you think, what should be the process? Now, the other concept that we're going to learn today are flag variables. So flag variables are going to be very useful whenever we need to be able to decide whether an event happened, whether the code went through the loop or not, whether we found the item that we were looking for, such as this code. So let's go through and go into Replit, and then we're going to go analyze two of your codes from your teammates. So let's move over to here, and we are going to move myself over to this side. Flag variables, we are going to have either an integer. I prefer usually to place it as a Boolean. So it's going to be, but in this case, I place as a integer. Integer flag equal to 0, and we're going to look at two examples from your teammates. So therefore, if we're going to set it equal to 0, we usually try to place it as a false statement first, and then if we do find it, so for example, in this case, if we find the target, so once we find the target, we are going to place it equal to 1. I prefer to place it as equal to true if it's going to be a Boolean. And therefore, we're going to say if flag equal to 0, that means that it never went through this line of code or through this segment of code. So therefore, we didn't find it. But if we did find it, that means because we placed that equal to 1, so therefore it's going to include the else. But let's actually look at the code from some of your teammates. We have our first flag variables that some of your teammates use, which are Abelia, Jocelyn, and Natalia. So in this case, if you guys remember this assignment, which was crack the code, so they use a flag statement, a flag variable, and they call it continue. So, and they place it as true. So therefore, if the user was able to guess it correctly, then they left the statement true. continue. But if by any chance they did not guess it correctly, then they place it as false. And then they use this variable on every single case and say if continue, which means that's true, then we can continue with the process. If they get the stage number 2 wrong, then they set it into false, and that means that it's not going to go through the next if statement because we have an and. So therefore, flag variables are going to be very useful as you want to be able to keep track whether something happened or not. So therefore, in this case, if they guessed it wrong and it continues saying to false, this is continue true? No, continue as false because they did not guess the second stage. So therefore, it will not go into this set of code, and then it's going to say, sorry, that was incorrect, better next time. Questions? The other person that did this was Joseph. He did a very good job in this case, where he placed, and this was assignment 4. Unit 3, lesson 4, activity 3. And he used a flag variable called valid equal to true. So as long as it's valid, then it's going to allow you to go into the next stage. So in this case, he just say, no, if it's valid, then that's great. If one of the octets are false, then valid is going to be false right away. And when I print the last statement, it's going to be requiring a lot less work. Say if true, then print the IP address. If by any chance any of those 4 octets were false, then valid will be assigned a false value, and therefore this will be false, and therefore this will not get printed at all. It's going to skip it. So those are flag variables.